I can't write worth shit.
I've been here for one video and you're already self-deprecating.
No, it's more of a self-reflection that I've kind of had for years. Dog, I'm 30 and or older now. If you can't tell what your flaws are by this point, you aren't really an adult yet. Instead, I know where my strengths lie. It's with editing other people's works. And it's led me to appreciate the artistry and what we see as a finished product versus the idea a creator has when it's just raw.
Please don't shoot the fucking gun, Tony! Oh my god!
So when I say editing, I'm covering a lot here. Proofreading and manuscript editing is kind of the first real step in most projects, and it's easily some of the most underrated work I know of. There's also audio editing, which I've been kind of dabbling in recently, making my own royalty-free music, especially for these videos, which are still all over the place in terms of quality. Finally, I'll mention video editing. That combination of the visual and audio after the writing is done to make something that hopefully can be taken in fast and with a high amount of detail. It's easily the one I'm the most interested in, but it's also the one that's kind of the most intimidating. I've been working at it for over a year straight, and some of that confidence is coming in, at least enough to do commissions for some people like Lucy.
Safe, chap. Wait, don't listen!
Look, what I'm trying to say is you don't understand how much good editing in any of these three areas can absolutely save whatever you're doing as a creator. And the people who are good at it, what do they get? We get tricked. Steady paychecks? The written word is really more of my comfort zone, which is funny because I've always hated writing. Working for a few smaller publishing companies, including Penguin Random House, for a few months, and a few freelance gigs for the Chicago Tribune were probably the most notable jobs in my life. Remember, contract work is always the worst. Otherwise, I've been a professional editor on and off for about 8 years and working as a technical writer for about the same time, if not longer. It's given me the opportunity to make ends meet over the years, working on things I'm either not allowed to discuss in a YouTube video and other things that I'm generally just not proud of.
You mean that time you had to write pornography for an
Yes, I do mean the time that... No, I'm not talking about that right now. Maybe if you got my Twitch channel to partner on. Writing is one thing, but I've tried working on audio since these are probably on the longer side of videos that most people don't want to watch, at least not closely, and I know you're not watching for the subtle visual jokes that I tend to sneak in, but the ones who do notice them, hey, I appreciate you. Hell, it wasn't even until the last video that I got my loudness where I wanted to be. You think I'd notice after a year of making these? Hell, I even have an album on Spotify.
That's not as significant as you think, Dick.
Can you just let me fucking have this? This shit, for the most part, is a one-bear operation at the end of the day. I'm lucky enough to have a co-writer, people who do review my work and help me keep my direction. But music, editing, this voice that you're hearing right now, everything that the Strawbear says, hell, that's me. Also, do you get it? Strawbear, strawman arguments, I'm so fucking fun. But because of this being mostly one person, I notice more and more issues in what I put out. And I tend to get a bit snobby about what I do put out now. Like, this is probably how most musicians feel when other niggas cover their shit. You missed the fucking point of the track. Where the fuck is that nasty drum in the back? Turn down the guitar, you goddamn idiot. Where's Ringo's drum solo?
I'm warning you with peace and love.
Lord, stop rambling. What is this video? Alright, well, I do want to see how the big dogs do it. You know, people who actually do get paid the big bucks to do all this shit. Look, I'm not Joss Whedon, so I can't just take a producer role and sit back. Depending on who you are, this is funny. And as much as I enjoy making music, I haven't found the drive to take a class on composing or playing an actual instrument. So instead, I'm going to lean into another half-assed passion of mine: teaching. I'm gonna learn you about editing and editors that I actually admire, especially since that could be a good influence on me. And who knows, maybe I can make you a little bit more aware of what actually goes into some of the things you build your fucking personalities around. Okay, before we get too deep into any of this, we need to hit some of the basics. In most media, there's 3 general schools of what we like to call editing. This is an oversimplification, so if you just Google something like, the DP of a film is technically an editor, let me express how impressed I am with you getting that thought out whilst being double penetrated. Writing is up first because it's typically the earliest in the process and one of the most revisited in just about any project, big or small. Note, being an editor is not always the same as being a writer. A good editor can take something like my terrible talking points and turn them into a slightly coherent thought. They give things flow, direction, and can even make you convinced of something you might have not agreed with or reach a conclusion you might have not made on your own. And before the straw bear pipes up, let me be the first to say that editing your own work is actually important. Your first revision should be done by you. But getting someone else who doesn't live in your head all the time will always do a better job. Those jobs include proofing, like your English teacher might grade you on, editing, which leads to more drastic changes, cuts, rewrites, etc. And ghostwriting, which, holy shit, some of you are going to have a fucking fit that ghostwriting is being a writer ridiculous. Which I will say, you're half right. Being a ghostwriter is not being some type of scribe for somebody telling you a story. At least it hasn't been in the last decade. You are just being given a topic and maybe some personal details and some anecdotes, and then told to write from a perspective of somebody who didn't even think it was worth writing anything down themselves. How did I get up on this soapbox? Where did I even find this? Audio editing is up next, and man, let me tell you, this is underrated as hell. You see, humans are programmed to be chimp-brained when it comes to feeling certain emotions, patterns, and moods. So when we discover that music can affect how we feel when doing something, it completely changes our level of investment. I've been working on trying to make music that I'd want to listen to across various rhythms and moods, but that's easier said than done when you've never taken a music class and only know how to stitch together samples. Still, even I know that the right track playing in the background at the right time can set a mood. It can be the life or death of the creator's intent. I know intent's a bit of a 102 college class phrase, so we'll come back to that in a bit. Finally, a visual editor is the main thing most of us think of nowadays when the word editing comes into discussion. The picture worth 1,000 words keeps us thinking about things for years and requires about the second most amount of time for digestion, so our brains can really absorb and understand what is being told to us. It's why every fucking film student is asked, what is this shot or scene trying to convey? When sometimes it's just there because the editor needed to fill a hole or make sure you knew where important things were. Like, imagine you were making something you and your friends were calling gobbledygook and asked for a shit ton of money to make something in an overly saturated genre like sci-fi or something. And through the magic of editing, you got that film turned into what is commonly known as the second movie ever to define the word blockbuster, because everyone wanted to watch it. And now the editor who helped make this a thing into what it actually is a footnote in history, while you, the director, has a fucking ranch named after one of your characters. Wait, is Paul Hirsch related to the Gravity Falls guy?
No, unacceptable.
Speaking of that, I'm supposed to be learning you something. Here's some quick tips I can give you. The first thing I learned as an editor was the more revisions you have earlier on, the better. This scripting process of mine takes about 2 months off and on, for example, essentially because I always want to go back through on what I have and make it a little bit quicker, funnier, tighter, whatever. And I never catch what I want the first time through due to my bad habit of editing in process. This is a terrible habit you might endure, since it'll cut off some ideas while you're editing or writing, or the focus or tone of what you're really trying to get across is lost. One thing I've learned to do to help with that is just writing things in your own voice and revisiting it after to make sure nothing was missed. If the thing we're talking about needs to be said exactly how somebody says it, then that's a form of refining that needs to be called out up front. Thus, things are communicated and understood better. But if whatever you're writing is open to suggestion or rewording, you should lean into it. I know I'll want to cut down on words, replace some of them, but keep the spirit of the idea in place, which is funny because I'm overly wordy in my own writing. The main point is, by sharing in and refining the idea as it's being made before anyone else is involved in the process or you've gotten too deep into things, it gives you more time to start brainstorming and stop spin-tiring the parts. Usually the final comes out a lot better. And you know, that final comes after the part we've been talking about with editing. You know, the cuts, the rewrites, all that shit. For example, hi, this is Editor Dick. I promise you by the time you've reached this part of the video, Stein and or I have cut out at least a paragraph or two out of this video. Probably more, since most of my writing is stream of consciousness by the time either of them get to hacking away shit. More so, I probably got too wordy up my own ass or tangenting just like I do in real life. And you know what? I probably still am right now. And I don't regret a bit of it. Please, it should be done more, and it's not just for me and my work. The original draft gets me to share the idea across the days or weeks it might take me to get where I want to be by the end. And while I have an outline, by the way, people, please outline your work. It only gets me so far. I need to have a slick flow from topic to topic, otherwise it will sound like I'm constantly stopping and starting. That's why having all these cuts get to the point where we talk about voice. Wait, what? Voice is a concept that I can only really explain in an example. Think of one of your best friends. You've known them for years, you got how they act down, how they respond, how they think in your head. Now, imagine you just told them that they got the day off from work, no strings attached. I don't care if they're unemployed, just go with it. And their boss told you first for some reason, so you're the one delivering them the news. What do they say? How do they react? That's their voice, and you have one too. I have in my notes that you can lose a voice if you belabor or tangent a lot, but I think it's more important as an editor to call out that voice and how things can be communicated. Because I ramble like a goofy bitch. You've sat through this much of the video so far, but if I think of someone else, they might manage to be very short or concise with how they act, react, or speak. And I think getting that across, how they are, is even more important. Same with finding that balance. Being too to the point and uber effective in communication can seem like, why use many word when few do trick? But you can lose a lot of what you want to communicate about how someone is or feel or thinks. That balancing act needs to flow as easily as someone talks, and it's a sign of a great writer, or in this case, the editor. Oh, also, if it's not completely obvious, we are still talking about all three schools of writing and editing at this point. Like audio, visual, written, it's everything. Okay, so here's where I get into trouble and threaten to show that I'm a complete ass. I want to talk about how some of the concepts we just defined compare back into the roles from earlier. Essentially how the writer's voice is supposed to be supported and refined by the editor. I'm going to oversimplify our writer title again to just being the idea guy. I'm using guy as gender neutral also, so please. Yes, there are cases where the editor can be the big idea guys, like the idea of a general editor of like a comic book or a newspaper, but the point of the writer right now in this case is to be our more detailed idea guy. Think of a writer like for an episode of a TV series versus the overall showrunner. The editor, in this case, is going to be the guy that has to take what the writer wants to get across to where it needs to be as fast as possible. The editor wants to have you, the audience, pick up what's happening without having to think about it any more than is absolutely necessary in the moment. And if there is something you need to think about, you'll have to purposely stop yourself instead of your brain stopping things for you.
I love giving brain.
It has the evolution of giving
dick,
head.
Ahmed. That's
Right,
what
I
getting
figured.
brain / giving head means.
But that sounds
If you have
very,
two mouths,
very
you can suck two dicks
uncomfortable.
at the same time.
It's very mushy in there.
This is a lot of that genius writing that people get credit for in a lot of popular media, because it's usually a dance of having enough time and detail for you to notice what's going on, but not enough time to get every drop of subtext or get bored with it. Now, think about your favorite TV show, video game, anything like that. On a rewatch or a replay, you might notice things you didn't pick up the first time, foreshadowing, subtext, all of that good stuff. That's the kind of effect we're talking about that results from good writing and editing. To hit this effect, there's usually a team of people to accomplish this. You can have a team of editors at the same time as having a team of writers in a writer's room. The goal is to make sure that everyone, and eventually the audience, gets and agrees what's coming across, and it does so successfully, or at least as well as the time and budget allow. So having good writers and proper editors who know how to work within their means is what makes things interesting. Look, we could be here all day just talking about these concepts, but I hope this is enough of what I'm trying to convey for you to take it further, because at the end of the day, this is just a YouTube video. Please keep learning. Please keep reading, writing, creating, and figuring out things and the reason why you like them, so that you can build the experience that you need to get to the next level. I'm going to push a little bit harder on you and say, especially you should be trying to do that thing you want to learn in a different medium. Hey, if you don't know how to write a novel or anything else like that, try writing song lyrics. Try making music. If you don't know how to make a video or do regular art, just try something in a way that you already do know. Or see if you can mix the two. Just have fun with it. Working with others is the best way to know if you're talking out of your ass or not, and Hey, the same with getting fresh eyes or ears on something you might have just been spending too much time on. So show your friends what you're working on. Even just joking around and talking with a friend about it is gonna help. Sort of like most kids and grown-ass adults on fanfic.net.
Dick, this all sounds like you're just a Fuck, I fucked that one up. Don't look at this one. Dick, this all just sounds like you're just taking a bunch of other people's ideas and sticking them in a blender.
Oh my god, you're right! Did you know, chat room, that there hasn't been an original idea since the 60s when everyone was tripping on acid? That's what you sound like right now. Inspiration is not just taking other people's ideas. You wanna know what that is? Sporking.
Oh, you made that word up. I've never heard of sporking.
Christ, and we call Stein a baby. He at least knows what that is. Just Google it. No. Ew. Sign. No, wait, yes. Holy shit, that was the top of the search result. What the fuck were you looking at? Essentially, this is where teenage writers and grown-ass adults used as bullying, according to Tumblr. But think of it like this. If coding has the phrase forking, which is taking something someone has made and making your own version of it, then sporking is the writing version of doing exactly that, but specifically doing it from the fact that you see it as something bad. Bad is a subjective term here. I'm not saying whatever you're originally taking is bad always, because it's usually done mostly to be petty, but I do want to call out that it's not the same as a parody, which usually comes from at least a little bit of respect. But there's usually something interestingly shit about whatever gets sporked, and you, my fledgling artist, are gonna want to dunk on that shit from space. For the lulz, of course. Now, I haven't forgotten that this is a video about editing, so I can't get too in-depth on this, but let me recommend this as an exercise for you to get in the habit of editing. Try sporking a scene from your favorite movie or game. Spork some dialogue from a book or a comic or a YouTube video. Dog, technically YouTube poop is a form of sporking. It's me and you, bitch. Yeah. Sporking doesn't get any love because it mostly was done by like MySpace girls in the 2000s, and there's a bunch of people who will call it a form of hating. But I think anything that takes hours of actual work, effort, and planning to put together can still be enjoyable and, I don't know, even just fun.
An announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch-ass motherfucker.
I'm pushing this so hard because I need you to grasp that editing is a horribly difficult, time-consuming, thought-intensive, and destructive process that needs to be done more. Like, holy shit, I feel like most people can think of a game, movie, book, manga, or a show that they love if you really sat down. You could probably say, man, I really don't want to go through that part again. Like, I really can't tell you how many things that I love that I feel would be perfect 10 out of 10s if they had just a small change here or there, or got rid of a part, or didn't try to focus so hard on something that wasn't really that important. And this is a form of expressing that. That expression is a relationship between the writer and the editor, and it's one that needs to be extremely close. I truly believe that it can't be done effectively by one person either. Note that I say effectively because I know some dickhead is getting ready to actually eat me. This is why I feel most great things have more than one person at the helm. It's why collabs of all sizes and scales are better received than just solo projects.
I'm so sorry.
Is that why all these videos are just you for the most part?
You really do know how to hurt me best, don't you? I do want to be careful though. I am pushing the collaboration of multiple people, but I can call out that I'm not a fan of anything made by committee. Your typical Marvel, Star Wars, multi-billion-dollar summer blockbuster doesn't do anything for me anymore, since that shit feels like it was made for the lowest common denominator. Art made for the creator's sake, that represents what they really want to see, that isn't shown commonly or goes viral on TikTok, is what really lives rent-free in my head. I mean, I fucking used a clip from Happiness in the last video. How was I not called an art snob for that? If anything, I think that people picking apart massive projects and pointing out these smaller, forgotten art pieces are necessary. Cause I can't think of many things that give the proper spotlights to things like happiness.
I wake up happy, feeling good, but then I get very depressed because I'm living in reality.
And yeah, for every nostalgia critic we get a cinema sins, but even then I think the former is necessary so people can think about what they actually like and why. Hey yo, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm not cooking. I'm dropping the mask again for a minute to talk to you directly. Please take some time one day and learn why you like something, Why do you like men? Or women? Or both? Or neither? Why do you eat what you eat? Why do you listen to the music that you do? Use that and figure out other things that can expand your horizons. Dog, I know people that have hated anime for ages but will watch Miyazaki films every year when they come into theaters. Same with people who hate rap music but then got into it when people remixed it into jazz or Persona or some fucking video game. You'll have a better appreciation, not only for the things you already enjoy, but new things other people enjoy too. Maybe instead of being a little hater, you could take a step back and realize that maybe you dislike something because it's mainstream or part of a thing oversaturated. When you get back to the popular thing, it sucks, and because things get boiled down to the lowest common denominator, it just all gets into... Oh yeah, and all of this is accomplished via people editing things. I forgot, I gotta tie it back to the topic. Okay, the way we're gonna do this section is talk about the big writers and the people that were acting as editors, because I still don't think y'all grasp how important these people are for the things that make up some of your entire personalities. Now, I'm swinging for the fences right out of the gate. Good old George gets memed on for being a bit of a hack, but before he was the fat old guy that eats salads all the time, he made the most important sci-fi movie of our lives. I feel like I don't have to tell you that George's biggest work were the first 6 Star Wars. No, he didn't do the recent ones. He sold those off to Disney, probably because they didn't want to deal with his ass with all the merchandising, which is why he's so inconceivably rich, like mentioned before. I mentioned Paul Hirsch before as kind of like a half joke, but the most notable editor for the film, which we now know as A New Hope, but was just Star Wars before becoming a franchise, is Marcia Lucas, his ex-wife now, but they were married for well before the film's completion. She's the one credited with doing the actual final cut, but she wasn't even the first editor to cut the movie. The first cut was apparently so terrible to George that he got it redone by his wife. Part of me does feel bad for John Jimpson, I think that's how you pronounce his name, the first guy for essentially being known in most nerds as the guy who got replaced. But it looks like he was trusted with it for a reason. He's got a ton of editing credits, although not many of them for any movies that I've seen. Back on track. The most notable thing she's been credited with was essentially cutting together the Battle of Yavin scene. For the rest of us who don't obsess over this, it's the big Death Star scene where Porkins blows up and Luke trusts in the Force to blow up the Death Star. Also adding the bit where Vader gets blown off spinning into space. Just fucking fantastic cuts everywhere in this movie. Essentially, without Marcia, the movie probably would be regarded as well as Indiana Jones is now. Speaking of which, after Star Wars popped, George took a break from directing and mostly just wrote, notably for an idea his buddy Steven Spielberg and him called Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, George didn't do the screenplay, which I kinda consider being editing, since the base idea was from The Adventures of Indiana Smith, which, holy shit, yeah, that name had to go. Jones is way better. When it actually came to editing the film, Michael Kahn tends to be the main result, with George being quote-unquote uncredited, according to IMDb. According to IMDb, Kahn has a ton of great credits I bet you know him from. Jurassic Park, West Side Story, Minority Report, fucking Saving Private Ryan. Like, this dude's a fucking legend. I feel like no regular film goer even knows who this guy is, though. Like, I sure didn't. Love reading notes on post-production like, Spielberg wanted a 3-hour cut, and Mike just said, it's 2. And that George loved that so much that he wanted it even shorter, particularly with the ending. Hell, dude, Marcia is even a part of this and helping the edit too. She called out that there's no closure for Indy and Marion, his love interest in the movie, and Spielberg had to go back and reshoot for it. We stan Marcia Lucas in this house, the real genius of filmmaking, especially when George went on to write fucking Howard the Duck. Hi, cutting room floor dick. I had a massive section here for Sam Lake and Neil Druckmann, but Sam Lake's creation process is very quiet, as you only ever hear from him on it, on just about anything. And the Neil section kept getting fucked over by the Sony stuff, and the fact that I just hate everything going on with the game industry right now just really made that a real downer of a section. But I need to call or point out at somebody in the gaming space, so let's pick on everyone's favorite why aren't you just making films games director and writer Kojima. Cutting room call out again. I had a bunch of information here looking at Snatcher and Police Knots, but again, it didn't fucking flow or work well in this script because tracking video game development in the 80s and 90s is a massive bitch, and doubly so for Japanese games. So fuck it, we're just jumping ahead to Metal Gear. Intruder, or otherwise known as Metal Gear, is the prequel to the acclaimed game Metal Gear Survive. Oh, I have been informed that if I continue this stupid bit, even as a joke, I may receive like a pipe bomb or like come in my mailbox. I'm just gonna. The actual original Metal Gear. Man, all this shit is still kind of the same to me. Far as what I can find, no one else was really directly credited in the MS2 version for writing and game design other than Kojima, which is fine since the dialogue and the story was severely limited due to space requirements at the time. Not to mention the NES port being the drastically changed version, even though that's what most Westerners think of when you talk about Metal Gear. This is my regular reminder for any writer that limits are good, self-imposed or technical. Oh yeah, and Metal Gear Solid is pretty good, I guess. I'm putting this up front since I know someone is just gonna jump into this part and hear everything else I have to say with a negative tone. So let me be completely straight, I really do enjoy this series. I played it and relatively am a fan of Solid 1 through 4, and when it comes to writing, next to Kojima on most if not all of those games in the series is Tomokazu Fukushima. Now, Fukushima is primarily credited as a co-writer and has been the lead on other Metal Gear media like Ghost Babel, but he's also been around since the first in the Solid series. Yes, I'm aware he wasn't there for the pre-production and is more so credited with punching up the dialogue, but in the same article I'm sourcing, they also credit Yoji Shinkawa for his involvement as well, which only makes sense as a character designer. Again, I'm handcuffed on a lot of this to accounts and articles because Japanese game development doesn't get a ton of coverage behind the scenes, and the sense of a game being a team effort is much stronger there than anything here in the West. You know, except in one case. Localization. Oh yes, the localization process. My final gambit. My gamble of the rune that gives me something concrete to speak about that usual stands can immediately type fast at me about. Yo, what would be like the Kojima equivalent of like a Taylor Swiftie? As part of the editing process, localization is a massive undertaking that most companies, publishing, and indie developers try to minimize the need for or just fully throw their hands up at. Konami, who were doubling down on their Western presence, got MGS a US, European, and pretty much worldwide release, and one man was in charge of putting the whole script into English. Jeremy Blaustein, I think it's Blaustein. I'm gonna go with Blaustein. I expect you to have the ability to read as well, as I'm sure you've been listening ever so closely to this section of the video, so I've included a link to his self-written article on Polygon in the description, wherever YouTube has put that now. It's really an interesting read, and the sign that Jeremy really didn't know how much he was signing on for at first. My favorite part has been people's reaction to him talking about the whole situation. Reset Era is fairly split with haters and fellators, both praising Blaustein and Kojima, or calling them both hacks and idiots. Either saying Kojima is a god who Jeremy should have revered at the very first meeting, completely missing the fact that Kojima was practically unknown at that time, or genuinely praising Jeremy for the work that he did. I'm more in the latter camp as someone who doesn't care much for literal translations in most cases, and someone who is a fan of MGS because of Jeremy's work localizing it. I 100% not only think, but know that MGS would not be as beloved in the West as it is right now without the English localization. Which is funny since apparently Kojima didn't even like it? I can't find anything solid on where that comes from, just a dumbass NeoGAF thread from 2013 that should be short for Neo I don't give a fuck because I aged looking at this stupid ass site. However, I want to give this thought some hypothetical credibility since localizers for like MGS2 have expressed being kneecapped in their freedom in making changes. I know I said that all in plurals, but as far as I can tell, it was just one person. Agnes Kaku is the main localizer for MGS2. And man, if Blaustein felt that he was drowning in dealing with MGS because there was just too much to work with, I can only doubly applaud Kaku's efforts. There's a big write-up on Hardcore Gaming, also linked, which is massive, and is a testament to how talented Agnes is as a localizer, being a native speaker of both English and Japanese, which feels a bit wasted since MGS2 is regularly referred to as a transliteration or literal translation. I'm stealing that line from Reddit since it feels like it's been a common belief that this game was much more of a direct translation of Kojima's work than one, and it's mentioned as such in Agnes's article. And you know what? I think it shows a lot in playing that game. Oh, the other reason why Agnes is famous as a localizer in this community is due to writing the section called "Kojima is not a writer" in this publication, which I'll admit is a little bit sensationalist, but if I was hired to do a job and then told by the writer and his company that, no, everything is set in stone, don't fuck with it or you're fired, I'd probably have the same reaction too. Personally, as someone who's never had to read his work directly, I have to reserve some of my judgment on Kojima, but I can say that of the main 4 games in the series that I've personally sat through, 2 is definitely the weakest. I'm not counting 5 since it's pretty public that Kojima isn't happy with how that came out, and it's the main thing criticized above everything else. Are the Kojima fans gone now? Can I talk about the person who actually got me to push this video up in the schedule? Akira Toriyama? Toriyama is forever heralded as one of the greats worldwide for his works, and with good reason. The man essentially was non-stop working from 1977 till his passing in just this year, and in that time, over 50 of his works were published in some form. I'm kind of cheating that number since a lot of them were one-shots, aka one-off stories that weren't meant to really go for serialization, but they were put into compilations that did fairly well. We can go into the man's history more and more, but I think the one I really want to talk about here for this video is his editor. See, Toriyama was seen as not too special at the time, with his start coming out from just offhandedly submitting a Star Wars parody to Boys Weekly. Alright fine, Shonen Jump, Jesus Christ. The editor, Kazuhiko Torishima, just happened to like him and reach out about getting something else of his published, which led to a few one-shots that were compiled in a thing called Wonder Island. Reading through it for the first time, I gotta say I kinda love this. The absurdist humor, the art, and the desire to break paneling for a gag. Top tier comedy writing for a man who just kinda wandered into doing this after a while. And who is his editor through all of it? Why, Torishima. He's even in like the little ending bit that artist comics usually do at the end of manga, calling out that Wonder Island fucking sucked in sales. Later on, Toriyama moved on to Dr. Slump, which was his first real success and what got him to be a household name over in Japan. While it's not as revered over here in the States, Dr. Slump is peak Toriyama gag manga in my opinion. And what I think is most interesting about it is we wouldn't even have Arl as the main character if not a bet he made with Torishima. Senbei was going to be Toriyama's first choice for the main character role. While that little anecdote is lovely, the real thing that got me interested in looking more into this was the call out that Torishima made. Both I and Toriyama have been new for the past year and a half. So we thoroughly worked out and tried and made mistakes on how we make interesting manga. Essentially, it's him confirming that, like most good publications, Toriyama and Torishima kept a really close relationship where they just kept working at it until they both agreed they had something figured out that was perfect. Dr. Slump went on from 80 to 84 and got about 236 chapters before we got to do our little Journey to the West Side story. Oh yeah, this is happening! My favorite prequel to the Sonic fandom's basis of obsession, Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is really another gag manga, at least in my opinion, or at least it was at first. Toriyama expressed that he wanted to stop doing serialized work, while Goku was actually still a kid. Torishima essentially had to sit down with him telling him, if you don't grow the character, you can't draw it anymore. Now, that is from an interview that's gone through auto-translate, but it's a great kick in the ass for most writers. Having someone essentially tell you that stretching yourself and just going for it is what makes someone a great writer, artist, mangaka, creator. Eventually, Toriyama started subtly implying that Goku was getting bigger throughout the manga, and it led to the end of Dragon Ball and creation of Z, and we all kind of know what happened from there. I thought about inserting the common section about the whole Cell's designs changes in Z and the don't make him look like an idiot comment, but those are also fairly anecdotal, So just go watch like the Plague of Gripes video on it. It's one of these in the fucking playlist here. I can't be bothered to watch all of it again for just one line. More importantly, he has an impact on fiction section in his wiki page, which I can't say I've ever seen before as an editor. He's been credited for influences on Dr. Slump, Dragon Ball Z, Doberman Deca, Video Girl I, fucking Saturday Night Slam Masters. What? Toriyama is still working to this day as a director at the time of writing, so he's still trying to make an impact on the industry in whatever ways he can. And while I can't overstate or understate the impact that Toriyama has on the manga world, I think it's pretty fair to give Toriyama at least a little bit of this credit too. You wouldn't have grown up the way you did, if you're my age or around my age at least, without Toriyama making the influence on what is the most popular manga of all time. And if you didn't grow up the way I did, or with the knowledge of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z like I did, the thing you probably enjoy was probably influenced by it, or Toriyama, or something else that Toriyama influenced. I need like the Plinkett intro music or something right now. In the end, I hope this gave you kind of a bit more appreciation for this role. The editor is someone who's usually vilified as the meanie bobini who goes to tell you your work sucks, despite being the reason what you actually see in the final product is as good or as bad as you actually think it is. Otherwise, everything you see would have like 20 different fucking versions and re-releases, like a Star Wars special edition, or a Kanye album, or a Metal Gear Subsistence. Writers are the initial vision, the drive and direction to get an idea somewhere, but the editor is that steering that makes sure you aren't just going in one direction with no way to stop. Toriyama, Agnes, Jeremy, Marcia, we owe you a lot more than you get credit for, since most of this media wouldn't be the cultural keystones they are without your efforts. I know in writing and film, editors are a bit more known and appreciated, but in gaming, I consider it an art form and a medium that deserves to be more recognized. Despite what most corpos want to do, which is just make this all another thing for mass consumption and tossed aside when it can't be sold easily anymore. So yeah, I'm calling you out, the viewer. Yeah, you. I want you to know that I appreciate you for sitting through all of this. And I hope this was kind of a springboard for more discussion or thought on your own about what you actually like and the people involved. Also, before you like sit down and like type a comment about like, hey, a lot of the things you're calling out you're actually doing, that's kind of the point. Thank you for noticing that. Ultimately, the arts are supposed to be enjoyed and make you think. So these were just the thoughts of some hack editor trying his hand at writing something bigger than himself.
Isn't the title of an editor more of just a role and not necessarily a job? So all of this is just a little bit misguided.
Well, yeah, but I more mean that fuck it, I can't have shit, can I?